folks, today I'm going to talk to Bimal Rath. Bimal is the founder of Thinktalent, HR advisory firm specializing in providing digital solutions in the areas of talent management, development, learning. So Bimal, thank you for joining. I hope you are staying safe and doing well.
Yes, thanks, Rishit, for inviting me for this conversation. And I think, I'm certainly going to enjoy this conversation as I can see so far.
So let's jump right in, Bimal. I mean, a big discussion in the working circle is work from home and remote workforce management. And work from home is not something new, right? It's just that the current crisis are acting as a catalyst, and we are fast forwarded into the future where anyways we envisaged that a large part of future of work will be about managing a remote and a scattered workforce. So I believe this is a great opportunity for the HR teams to really learn how to manage remote workforce. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, and what are the key learnings which you believe HR can have from these current situation so that they prepare themselves for the future?
Correct. So, if you look at, work from home as a phenomenon, I think there is an assumption that, work can be structured in exactly the same way as it was getting done in office and can be transferred pretty much to a work from home environment. Mm-hmm. I think from a broader perspective, I think there are 4 or 5 things which I think need to be considered. One is just very simply home infrastructure. Does the infrastructure allow you to actually work from home? Most people in India don't really have private spaces that much, and your home furniture and other things are not really equipped to ergonomical working kind of a thing. So that's one aspect, which is infrastructure. I think the second aspect is technology. Technology, I think, will catch up very quickly. Already people are doing work from home, as you rightly pointed out. People have been doing it, so I don't see that it's going to be a big issue in that sense. And I'm sure providers and regulators will ensure that the technology piece is taken care of. So to me, that's like the simpler issue. The third issue is a social issue, that we are social beings, and human interaction cannot be fully replaced by technology based working from home in that sense. And how do you cater to that? Because pure working from home will leave a social gap. Okay. Then there is a fourth thing around skills and capabilities, and which I think is hugely underrated at this point of time. I think the skills required for collaboration, the skills required for communication, skills required for planning your time, and so on and so forth. I think there'll be a huge training requirement on all of these very basic stuff for people to be able to actually work from home. That becomes the new normal. So infrastructure, technology, the skills and the social aspect are the 4 key. The fifth one I want to bring about is more an emotional and individual aspect. There's this whole thing about subjective well-being, and work from home can have aspects to mental and emotional well-being, which I think again we are underplaying at this point of time because it's not being long enough, and I don't think there is too much research and study which can tell us what exactly we need to do. But clearly these are the 5 aspects which people will have to keep in mind.
So yeah, Bimal, it's interesting to hear your thoughts on remote workforce management. And what I understand in the takeaway for me is it's essentially an interplay between technology and people-related elements. And I think as a tech co-founder myself in an HR tech space, I'm very interested on how technology is able to solve people-related issues. And I think that brings me to another question that I keep thinking about, and in my recent interactions with a lot of HR leaders, one of the challenges they keep saying is that their ROI on technology investments is not up to the mark, right? And this is because of various challenges. But one of the challenges they say is the fact that the products and the technology solutions prima facie look okay, right? But whenever you hand over those solutions to the actual team, to the end users and all that, something doesn't work, right? At times the problem is with the product itself. At times the problem is with the users themselves in terms of challenges they are facing in terms of adopting and using that. Now I am someone, and it's really interesting. I'm asking this question to you, someone who has seen 3 decades of HR, starting from 90s to 2000, and now you are pretty much at the forefront of digital, running a digital firm yourself. How have you transformed yourselves, and how have you helped your teams, manage this change? And what is the advice that you will have to some of the upcoming HR leaders and a lot of people like you on what are the things they should focus on to help them adopt and use technology a lot more?
Right. So I think on adoption, I think what people perhaps underestimate is the resistance to change. Okay, so it is like any other change process, irrespective of how good the technology is or the product is, kind of a thing. And my guess is that like any other change, initiatives and organizations fail very often. This is also exactly the same case. Okay, so we don't spend enough time and effort and attention in actually working through the change process. Now, the other implication is that particularly in technological change, people have to have a very deep sense of personal skills. Okay, so for example, when you are doing an org restructuring, if you can, take that as a change, individuals may not have to change so much in terms of personal skills. In technology change, either it's using a new product or, a new way of doing things. Actually, there's a deep sort of personal change required in both the mindset and the skills. And I think we don't spend enough on training, retraining of people, number one. Number two, I think there is an assumption that everybody will be automatically sort of adopting to the change, like any other change process, unless we have a very clear way of at some stage having a cutoff saying, if this set of people don't really adopt, then what is my action plan? Whether be it a stick or a carrot approach or whatever it is. There's one other aspect in addition to this, I think, which is a more strategic aspect, right? So, see, it's easy to look at technology, a product or a service or whatever it is you're buying, and look at return for investment in isolation. My suggestion to people would be that don't look at a technology product in isolation. Look at what else is it doing in addition to just the adoption of that technology. Is it helping you reduce manpower? Is it helping you reduce supplier cycle times? Is it helping you reduce other, unwanted costs? Is it helping you reduce infrastructure costs? So I think any technology sort of investment has to be looked at a much more broader level than just the product adoption level or at the sort of, the specific direct benefit level. There are a lot of other, huge unsaid costs and hidden costs, which I think need to be considered when you're looking at ROI in these kind of products.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I also feel that apart from having a very robust change management and communication process, I think the leaders need to show the way, because, if there is a new product that you have taken up, then immediately you should start, as a leader yourself, you should start using it, and also ask for things which are getting driven through the workflow of that product, instead of letting things run the way it was running earlier. So I think that is another element. And I think what we are seeing within UniHyr is that the adoption of the product is much higher when you are considering the case of well-funded early stage startups for using the product extensively. Because I believe what you said is exactly right. I mean, those guys are actually seeing a lot more than just technology, and hence they are really able to utilize the product that well. And actually that's an interesting point, because and that brings me to my third question, is that Indian startup ecosystem really, and I hope to have some personal takeaways from me, given the fact that I'm also running a startup. The Indian startup ecosystem has come a long way and matured a lot in the last decade. And today what we are seeing is there's a crop of founders who are looking to build sustainable organizations right from the word go. Even with respect to people practices, they want to define a set of values and culture that they want to follow, and have a certain vision for the organization, right? And one of the key challenges that they face is in the area of talent management. Now, what advice would you have for the founders of these 3-digit growth companies, really, with respect to end-to-end talent management, right from the time of acquiring, selection, development, and the whole cycle.
Right, right. So, I think the first aspect is around hiring. Okay. And I think people are still looking very, very deeply at the skills and the capabilities and pedigree. And I'm not saying that these are not important, but I think if you want to build a sustainable organization, perhaps the aspect of values and culture, which you mentioned briefly, is a more critical aspect. And I would urge startup founders to look very closely at things like attitude, learning agility, the capability and the intent of the person to collaborate, and so on and so forth. I think these aspects are far more important if you want to build a sustainable organization, instead of trying to do a quick fix around skills and capabilities, because people who want to learn and people who have the right attitude will anyway learn, and collaboration is a very critical skill in times to come, even more than today, right? So that's one aspect. I think the second aspect is that like everything else, when you want to build a culture of a particular kind and imbibe values, it takes a structured approach. Okay. My experience of most startups is that they see this as something which is nice to have, but perhaps not as critical and not to be invested in terms of time and money and effort, right? And I think that is the second point. Therefore, I would say that all startup founders need to take a structured approach to it. If required, spend time, effort, and money, and so on and so forth. I think the third aspect is to look at process. And ultimately, culture is all about process. And depending on the kind of process you design, not just the people process, but process to collaborate, process to, for example, how do you make decisions, what information do you pass on to people or not pass on to people, how transparent are you with company future and vision, and so on and so forth. I think those make a very significant impact. So again, I would say that startups should right from the beginning actually spend a lot of time on defining their process really well. And this actually can be done only by the founders. So if you have a set of 3 or 4 founders, I would actually almost put them in a room and say that, okay, what kind of a company do you want? Maybe just tell them you don't come out of the room till you agree on some of the core process and some of the core ways you want to build the company, even if it takes 2, 3, 4 days, whatever it is. Just pack them in and do that, right? So that's the third aspect. I think the fourth aspect is to do more with the person's own or the leader's own personality and role modeling. Mm-hmm. And very often in startups, that is, at the cost of being sounding a little bit critical, that is a challenge, because they are so much in a hurry and they're so personally driven, and rightly so. So I'm not saying that you take away from the energy or the personal drive, but also balance it with other aspects, because when you build an organization, it takes a lot of patience, takes a lot of balance, understanding that not everybody is as driven as you are, and that's why you are the entrepreneur and not everybody. And I think bringing that whole people management aspect and personal role modeling as a leader. So I would say that a lot of the startup founders need to focus on their own personal development, and therefore how can they role model? And I'm not talking about necessarily spending a lot of money on leadership development. But what I'm talking about is that maybe they need a personal mentor, maybe they need a personal coach, maybe they need somebody who can help them through that journey. So those are the 4 aspects I would say are, in a way important to keep in mind, right?
Interesting. I mean, I think the tricky pieces there in what you said remain. How do you really go about evaluating someone on learning agility and some of the other skills and competencies that you mentioned? Because while in theory all of us agree that these are important, and also the fact that one needs to have a balance between being driven and leading a team, in terms of what you rightly said, that entrepreneur is in a different zone and maybe not every employee is in that zone. I think it's about the environment has to be created where both of them walk a few steps towards each other, right? The employee needs to be driven pretty much as much as the entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur needs to have a grounded and a level-headed thought process, which gives due cognizance to the fact that these guys are possibly not as driven as as you are as an entrepreneur. So I think those are very, very important points. I think Bimal, thanks a lot. It's been a very, very interesting conversation, and I believe there's a lot of wisdom which is there in those conversations, and hope to reconnect with you soon again. Stay safe.
Yeah, thank you. And Nisha, there was a lovely conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bimal. Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.